Good evening and a very warm welcome to Rwanda Television News. My name is Gloria Mutesi. As we begin this bulletin, let's take a moment of silence to remember the victims of the 1994 genocide perpetrated against the Tutsi. Starting us off tonight, President Paul Kagame has stressed that the lies of those who deny and negate the genocide against the Tutsi cannot reverse the progress the country is making, and urged Rwandans to be courageous and confront them. The head of state made these remarks at the ceremony to mark the beginning of the 27th commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Ethan Tachobia has more on this story.
The ceremony to mark the beginning of the week of the national commemoration and the 100 days of the 27th anniversary of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi were preceded by the laying of the wreath at Kigali Genocide Memorial, where 250,000 victims are laid to rest, and the lighting of the frame of remembrance. The event was led by President Paul Kagame and First Lady Jeanette Kagame. They were accompanied at the Kigali Genocide Memorial by the Dean of Diplomatic Corps in Rwanda, as well as representatives of the associations of the survivors of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. A few minutes later, the commemoration ceremony continued at Kigali Arena, where different dignitaries gathered in observance of the COVID-19 measures for the ceremony marking the 27th commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi. In his address, President Kagame noted that this is the second time that Rwanda has marked genocide against the Tutsi under difficult times caused by COVID-19 pandemic, a condition he believes contributes more to hardships faced by genocide survivors. However, the head of state paid tribute to the genocide survivors for their spirit of resilience.
Not being able to come together to remember our loved ones, as it has always been, may add more pain to the genocide survivors. But it is in their strength that we draw the courage to continue rebuilding ourselves and the nation. We appreciate your resilience and sacrifice towards a better future for Rwanda.
While narrating the root cause of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi and its ideology, the Executive Secretary of the National Commission for the Fight Against Genocide, Senerge, Dr. Bizimana Jean Damascene, pointed out that devastations, killing and prosecution of Tutsi had begun going on since 1959. He spoke on how post-independence primary Hutu ideology of segregation was inherited by the genocidal MRND political organization and its allies.
Tariki ya mbere z'ukwezi kwa gatanu 1998.
On May 1st, 1998, Jacques Kambanda, who was the Prime Minister of the genocidal government, pleaded guilty before the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda that his government carried out the genocide against the Tutsi, which had been planned before the fall of the former President Habyarimana's plane on April 6, 1994. He said, and I quote, "I, Jacques Kambanda, acknowledge that in 1994 there was a planned massacre to kill Tutsi citizens hatched by the government to eliminate them. As the Prime Minister, I chaired cabinet meetings which issued orders to cabinet members, top-ranking military officers and local government leaders to oversee the implementation of the genocide. This included sending cabinet ministers to provinces to rally citizens to participate in the killings of the enemy, I mean the Tutsi." That is one crime Kambanda pleaded guilty to. For those who still struggle to admit that genocide was not planned and deny it, are lying to themselves.
President Paul Kagame, based on this, to call on everyone to boldly and deliberately confront the deniers of the genocide against the Tutsi.
If genocide deniers have no shame of distorting our history, why should you and I have fear to deal with them?
In his address, which lasted about an hour, President Kagame said that the fact that some countries have been hosting genocide fugitives for the past 27 years and refused to extradite them or try them in their own courts is a disgrace to them and an insult to Rwanda and the genocide survivors. President Paul Kagame also spoke about the ongoing trial of terror suspects and those who are accused of destabilizing national security, pointing out that their actions reflect the views of the countries that sympathize with them and those that continue to call for their release. The head of state noted that Rwanda cannot afford to allow such dangerous games against its people to be played on its territory ever again.
You can tell any lie about me. You are free to do so. Can pile up tons of lies. It won't change me. Absolutely not. It won't change this country to be what you want it to be. Doesn't matter how many lies. Let me tell you this. We will be happy to be criticized for doing what we have to do and believe that we have to do against these acts. Rwandans believe that our country cannot afford to allow such dangerous games against our people to be played on our territory ever again.
The commemoration week of the genocide against the Tutsi, which began on Wednesday, April 7th, will end on April 13th, while the 100 days of remembrance will end on July 4th, the day considered the end of the genocide against the Tutsi, when the RPF in Inkotanyi captured Kigali and other parts of the country in the campaign to stop the genocide and liberate Rwanda. Reporting for RTV News, Ethan Tashabia.
Thank you, Ethan, for that report. Now, today, the Embassy of the Republic of Rwanda in the Kingdom of the Netherlands held a virtual ceremony marking the 27th commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. In observance of all measures taken in this country by the Dutch government aimed at limiting the spread of the COVID-19, the online program was developed in cooperation with Ibuka Netherlands. Ambassador Olivier Nduhungirehe joins us live from Netherlands via Skype. Good evening, Ambassador, and thanks for sparing a moment of your time to speak to us.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Could you please give us the highlights of today's events in the Netherlands on the 27th commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, and what was the key message?
Yes, this year was the second year in a row that we organized Kwibuka virtually, online, because of restrictive measures taken by the Kingdom of the Netherlands to protect the people against COVID. So we had a ceremony this afternoon via YouTube, and we had guests that were invited representing different institutions. This event was co-organized by the Embassy of Rwanda to the Netherlands with Ibuka Netherlands, which is the organization of genocide survivors. And the guests were Judge Carmel Agius, who is the president of the International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals, who made a powerful speech against genocide denial. He even said that lies written in ink or on social media will not erase facts written in blood. This was a very powerful statement.
Absolutely.
And then we had also the representative of the Dutch government was Mr. Paul Heitz, Secretary General in the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we had also a survivor of the genocide, Miss Naila Clarissa, who delivered her equally powerful testimony on how she survived the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. We had also the pictures that were displayed showing Urumuri Rutazima, the never-ending light, and this was the ceremony of Kwibuka, the official ceremony of Kwibuka 27 in the Netherlands, which was organized online.
Ambassador, speaking on that concept of genocide, denial and ideology, it's not a new phenomenon. What do you think are the direct implications of the continued denial of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi?
It's a scourge that has been widening, I would say, for the past years. Initially, it was spread by genocide fugitives who fled to neighboring countries, to Zaire, to Kenya, and then they went to Europe, North America, and elsewhere, including here in the Netherlands. So they settled here with their families and communities. They start spreading genocide ideology. But now we have also journalists, we have activists, we have other people who are I would say, espousing this ideology. And I think His Excellency the President also said it. We have also the youth, people who were born after the genocide, who have nothing to do with the genocide, but who are also spreading that ideology. And then we, as the Embassy of Rwanda, together with IWUKA Netherlands, we of course want to curb this scourge of genocide denial. We have requested this afternoon a memorial here because unlike the countries of the region, France, Belgium, Switzerland, Italy, the United Kingdom, we don't have a memorial here. I think it will be good as an I would say an educational program for the Dutch people to have a memorial. And we want also the history of the genocide to be taught in schools here, in Dutch schools and other forums. And we are going to work with the Dutch government about the possibility of this legislation criminalizing genocide denial on the model of laws already enacted in France and Belgium.
Europe is one of those parts of the world with a relatively big number of genocide fugitives. What are some of the things in the countries within your jurisdiction, what are some of the things that you're doing to ensure international justice?
Here, I think the Kingdom of the Netherlands is one of the countries that I would say they are doing the most compared to neighboring countries. They have tried and convicted already two genocide fugitives, one Mhambara Joseph and another Basebia Yvonne. They have deported genocide fugitives named Munyaneza Jean de Dieu. They have extradited two, Mudimba Jean-Baptiste and Yamuremye Jean-Claude aka Nzinga. And we have also two other genocide fugitives that are in detention, that are waiting extradition. They are in process for extradition. And then we have also a number 4 or 5 who are under investigation. So unlike other countries, like the countries that His Excellency the President was alluding to this afternoon, of those countries who don't want to extradite or to prosecute, here we had both. We had extradition, but we had also prosecution and conviction of genocide denial, but genocide fugitives. Sorry. But there are still few who are still roaming here in the streets of Dutch cities and towns. We hope that all those genocide fugitives will eventually be brought to book.
Absolutely. Ambassador Olivier Nduhungira here, thank you so much for your time this evening.
It's me. Thank you very much.
Right. Now coming back here to Rwanda, survivors of the genocide, of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi living in Kigali city say they will never forget the large number of those killed on April 7th, 1994 on roadblocks that were immediately put on highways and shortcuts after the shooting of the former President Habyarimana Juvenal's plane. Innocent Mugabo has more.
In Nyakabanda sector, in Munanira's second cell, there still remains a demolished house belonging to Shasti, a genocide victim who was killed together with her family on April 7, 1994. Many roadblocks had been set up at various locations in Kigali city, according to testimonies shared by many residents of Kigali city at the time. including Daniel Shimiyumuremyi, a survivor in Nyakabanda sector in Nyarugenje district, and Mutabazi Martin, a survivor in Nyarugunga sector in Kichuchiro district in the former Kanombe commune. Imagine having 5 roadblocks set up from our place to here at Cafe. That is to say that even shortcuts linking to the main road were also blocked, not forgetting elsewhere, leaving no gap for the Tutsi to escape. After the shooting of Habyarimana's plane, his security detail closed off all the roads with no one else allowed to move apart from the French that were asking for documents. The two believe that 27 years after the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, a step has been taken in terms of reconstructing unity among Rwandans, only that they remain unsettled with the fact that they haven't been able to locate the remains of their beloved ones to be accorded a decent burial. We wish they would help us to find the remains of our beloved ones to be given a decent burial, but otherwise we remain in distress. As the country has already made significant strides in building a broken social fabric, some experts believe that there are reasons why some hardliners may insist on their perceptions, as Felix Banderemabaho, a professor at the University of Rwanda, explains. Some people lag when it comes to this program due to a variety of reasons, some of whom it's because of bandwagon or stubbornness and cannot change or see progress as others are seeing. Hence failure to accept these positive changes instead of keeping up with the times. A study by the Ministry of Health in 2018 found that the depression among genocide survivors was at 35% and the trauma at 27.9%. Jean-Paul Kabano, the Ibuka president in Bumbogo sector, says that trauma and depression among the survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi in the area increased during commemoration period. 2 cases were reported in Chibagabaga, and now the Bumbogo sector administration is following up on all the victims. We have only found 2, but we are still looking for others to help. It is a step we have taken in this sector of Bumbogo as Ibuka in collaboration with the sector, so that if they are found, we help them to be offered medical attention. This is the 27th time that Rwanda and the world have commemorated the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda that claimed more than 1 million people. Innocent Mugabo, RTV News.
Survivors of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi who are commemorating in their homes due to the coronavirus restrictions say remembrance is one of the most powerful weapons that helps them in the struggle to ensure that the genocide does not happen again. Sam Kalisa continues with this story.
At Ruyonza Vital's home in Kigali, together with his household, they have emotionally joined the rest of the world in commemorating the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in the morning. Following the commemoration event being broadcasted on radio and television, they took a moment to remember the names of their family members who died in the genocide. Vital Ruyonza says remembrance is a tribute to those who were killed during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, but is also a powerful weapon to ensure it never happens again. Commemoration for the genocide survivors is to reflect on the history and see how the history is never repeated, as we remember our loved ones who died during the days of bad leadership of our country. Rutaisire Prudence, a young man living in Kimironko in Kigali, also had to commemorate from where he lives. He says that while it was not possible for him to join fellow Rwandans to commemorate in the usual way because of the COVID-19 restrictions, to him commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi means a lot, including fighting those that deny the genocide. Yes, remembrance is one weapon to prevent the genocide from happening again, but it also includes countering the deniers and teaching the young people the history of the genocide so that them not knowing or having the right information isn't the root cause of it happening again. Dr. Philbert Gakwenzire, a researcher, says that remembering the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi is an indisputable weapon in preventing the recurrence of genocide.
dushubije amaso inyuma tukarekera aho ngaho ntiturebe imbere nta kintu byaba bimaze.
Looking back only without looking at the future is pointless. But rather, we have to learn from this and build a Rwanda free from genocide as an example to the other countries based on what happened in our own country that we don't wish for it to happen to any other people. This is the second year that Rwandans are being encouraged to commemorate the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in a special way, following the guidelines to prevent the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. Although commemoration is currently being held in a special way, Rwandans are encouraged to consider avoiding the genocidal ideology.
Some of the survivors of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda say that healing from the wounds and the trauma of the genocide is what has given them confidence in life to be able to strive and provide for their families. On one hand, psychiatrists say that it is possible for people dealing with trauma to overcome to a point that they can confidently share their traumatic experiences. Gabi Movoni has more.
Here at Uyisenga Nimanzi is where those dealing with trauma are assisted when in need of help. One of the paintings in the building is a drawing of a person with 3 nails pierced on their head. Written in the painting, the artist explains that the piece means without family and feeling of rejection. Some of the survivors of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi say after the loss of their loved ones, they are devastated.
We were a family of 10, 8 children and my wife. They were all killed and I was left alone. I feel like I have no peace left in me. I feel like I have no life left in me.
I lost 3 of my children and my husband in the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi and was left with 5 children. It really hurts me. I am no longer a happy person. When I look at pictures of my children, I always dream of them and think of how I will never be close to them again. A clinical psychologist says that not only those that were older during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi experienced trauma, but also those that are young could also visually understand what they saw.
Children would look around to see if there is any relative still alive, and they wouldn't find any. This made them feel lonely and hopeless, wondering who they shall look up to, or if they shall become anything in life with the entire trauma from what they saw during the genocide. All this caused them so much pain and the feeling of being alone.
A clinical psychologist at Kareya Sindera Hospital notes some of the things that can help those dealing with trauma in their lives.
To make this possible, the person needs to be able to explain what they are going through. Why people experience trauma is because they relive the traumatic events that took place during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. We help such a person by building strength and hope in them in such a way that if they happen to meet the person that did harm to him or her, then he or she wouldn't be afraid that they have the capacity to do it again.
Some of the survivors of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi emphasize that reaching out to psychiatrists has helped them cope with their daily lives. We have had donors approach us where they suggest that those who know how to weave can come together and form a corporation. When we sit all together, it makes us feel wholesome again. It makes us feel like we're not all widows. We sit, we laugh, and enjoy each other's company. Another thing is that we're also making money to support our families. Peace team building leader at Never Again Rwanda says after 27 years after the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, there are some survivors that need continuous support dealing with their trauma.
So healing is a long-term journey. Despite the fact that it's been 27 years since the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi occurred, the consequences are still being felt today. 1994 genocide against the Tutsi for the 27th time. It's very, very important for us to continue thinking about our community and our society at large. How, in terms of promoting mental health awareness, because sometimes there are people who are not even aware that, mental health is something serious that needs to be addressed, that needs to be taken note of. So that's one thing we need to do, is to continue promoting mental health awareness. through individual therapy where possible, some of the services that we are offering at Never Again Rwanda, through information sharing, because that's also one way of people getting to know, especially at the community level, when local leaders are able to know that in our society, we have these individuals who have this category, these types of wounds, and so they can see how to support them.
Mental health professionals say that when trauma is approached or treated poorly, it may result in various mental illnesses. The mental health division manager at Rwanda Biomedical Center says that those dealing with trauma will soon be able to overcome. In addition to medication, a person can be born with natural resilience. Also, society may help them heal through various forms of support, including good security. Also, all children are helped to go to school. When COVID-19 vaccinations become available, everybody is informed on how the vaccination will go, and no one is excluded from it. And the fact that we're all hopeful that by next year 60% of the people will be vaccinated, all that helps with healing trauma. The Ministry of Health says that there is a plan to conduct a survey in order to assess the state of mental health illness among the survivors of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. A study conducted in 2018 indicates that major depressive episodes in survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi is 35%, while in the general public is 11.9%. While the trauma rate among the survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi is 27.9%, while the general public is 3.6%. Gabi Muvunyi for RTV.
Thank you, Gabi. Now, as residents in Kigali commemorate the 27 years since the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, they are doing so while focusing more on rebuilding and safeguarding what has been achieved. Jane Mutoni has more.
During the afternoon hours, various businesses and other activities in Kigali were closed. Some of the residents were in their homes listening to the radio, others following on television and online the national ceremony marking the beginning of the week of commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. I watched the whole ceremony while at work and the president's speech. We are urged to tell the whole truth about our history, put it in writing so that our children can read and understand what happened, so that our history is never forgotten.
During the president's speech, he despised those that deny the genocide against the Tutsi, where he used the metaphor about an arrogant lion and a sheep and urged us not to be bullied as sheep. It meant a lot to me and a great message to the genocide deniers.
During the afternoon hours after the ceremony, all activities were allowed to reopen and operate as normal. Owners of these businesses say they hold themselves accountable for self-development and to protect all that has been achieved for the last 27 years after the genocide against the Tutsi ended.
Yes, we must remember, but again, we shouldn't be held down by the dark past and grief. Instead, we should work hard to rebuild all that was destroyed 27 years ago. We must mourn while striving to build the Rwanda we envision.
This year marks the second time Rwanda commemorates the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi while still in fight to combat COVID-19 pandemic. Jane Mutoni reporting for RTV.
Also in the news today, this Wednesday, the 7th of April, the United Nations has joined Rwanda and the rest of the world in the 27th commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has asked everyone worldwide to prevent history from repeating while avoiding hate-driven movements, as well as pushing for the full respect of all members of society. Ghislaine Mugwaneza has the details.
In his message to Rwanda, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda remains as the most horrific event in recent human history.
On this day, we honor those who were murdered, we reflect on the suffering, and we recognize the resilience of those who have survived. As we join in solidarity with the people of Rwanda, we must take a hard look at today's world and ensure that we heed the lessons of 27 years ago. Today, around the globe, people are threatened by extremist groups. We saw what happened in Rwanda in 1994. and we know the horrific consequences when hate is allowed to prevail. Preventing history from repeating itself requires countering these hate-driven movements that have become a transnational threat and continue to push for policies that fully respect all members of society. Rwanda experienced one of the most painful chapters in modern human history, but its people have rebuilt from the ashes. The people of Rwanda have shown us the power of justice and reconciliation and the possibility of progress. On this solemn day, let us all commit to building a world guided by human rights and dignity for all. Let us all commit to building a world guided by human rights and dignity for all.
On this day, the African Union also organized a ceremony of the 27th commemoration of the 1994 genocide against Tutsi at the AU headquarters in Addis Ababa. The African Union has been organizing this event for 10 years. The chairperson of African Union Commission, Moussa Faki Mahamat, reminded Africans and the rest of the world that the tragedy happened in Rwanda should never be forgotten. He also said that in these last 27 years, Rwanda promoted unity and reconciliation. Moussa Faki Mahamat has urged Africans to eradicate divisionism that still exists in some countries. The ceremony of the 27th commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi was also held in Geneva, Switzerland. The ambassador of Rwanda to Switzerland, Marie-Chantal Gwakazina, commended all those that participate in keeping genocide memories. She said that UN did not manage stopping the genocide, as well as mentioning that there are people across the world that still deny the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi.
Le négationnisme est la dernière étape du cycle de tout génocide.
Denial is the last stage of the genocide, and it is a sign that another genocide is likely to happen again. Today we see an increase in the denial of the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. When we look at it, we see that as time goes by, those who deny genocide are more active in denying the genocide. Many of those who deny the truth live in the cities and capitals of Western countries in Africa and make extensive use of social media in their activities.
Et africaine, et utilise largement les réseaux sociaux.
During the ceremony, it was also said that the first weapon to prevent genocide is to bring justice to the victims. Between 2017 and 2020, Rwanda issued 1,145 arrest warrants for genocide perpetrators in 33 countries around the world. Therefore, those countries have been asked to comply with the requirements in order to arrest those perpetrators. Ghislaine Mugwaneza, reporting for RTV.
Thank you for your company tonight. Let's remember, unite and renew our commitment to never again. Stay well and stay safe. God bless you and keep you. And until next time, I'm Gloria Mutesi.